Hello, and thank you for joining this webinar about NIS2 and ISO 27001 and actually what is relevant for IT suppliers. So let's wait maybe a half a minute for everyone to join. And actually, while we are waiting, can you please let me know where did you join the webinar from? I'm calling in from Zagreb, from Croatia. So if you can just let me know your city and the country where you're calling from, just to get a feeling on where all the people are joining from. So you can send, if you're on Zoom, you can send this through this Q&A pane. If you're on LinkedIn or Zoom, you can send this through, if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can send this through chat window. I see Houston, Texas, great. Norway, great, okay. Good to know. So it's Sweden as well, great. Lisbon, Portugal. Okay, so mainly Europe, but I'm glad also that we have someone from the States. So obviously NIS2 is interesting, not only in Europe. Oxford, UK, Canada, great. Many people, Thailand. Okay, great. Bavaria, Germany. Very well. So just a couple of notes before we start with the webinar. So first of all, we are recording this webinar, so you'll be able actually to watch the recording of the webinar basically on the same page where you registered for the webinar. So if you registered through Zoom, then you will see it on the same page where you registered. If you are joining this through LinkedIn or YouTube, then basically on the same page where this live webinar is now running, you will see also the recording. Okay, Stuttgart, Germany. Okay, great, thank you. Second thing, you'll be able to download this presentation deck, and if you can actually stick till the end of the webinar, I'll explain you where you can download the webinar. So just if you can remain till the end. Okay, great. So I think we can start. So welcome to this webinar. Must IT suppliers comply with the NIS2 or ISO 27001? And my name is Dejan Kosutic, and I'm the main ISO 27001, NIS2 and 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗏 expert at Advisera. And Advisera is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use. This webinar today is streamed through, as already mentioned, Zoom, but also LinkedIn and YouTube. And it will last between 50 and 60 minutes, and I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So, you can ask any questions that you're interested in, and you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask your questions during my presentation, and I'll try to answer those questions as you start sending them. So, by all means, please do send as many questions as you want, and I'll try to answer all of them. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So why is this topic important? Well, it's important because NIS2 really introduced a much stricter requirements on how to handle suppliers. And this is something that typically did not really exist before in some previous regulations. There are even stricter requirements in 𝗂𝗲. 𝗂𝗲 is another EU regulation, but this one is focused on 𝗂𝗲 is focused on financial entities, but today we'll stick only to NIS2. NIS2 also is stricter when it comes to the suppliers. So basically what I'll explain in today's webinar, what are these security requirements for suppliers, and also how to implement them. And I'll be looking at both the, let's say, angle of these companies that are in the NIS2 scope, that have to comply with NIS2, but I also take a view and of this or angle of these IT suppliers, so companies that are not in the NIS2 scope, but are supplying their products or services towards companies that are in the NIS2 scope. So I'll try to cover both of these angles during the webinar. Okay, so I would say, this NIS2 presents obviously an obligation for companies that are in NIS2 scope. But other than this, it also provides an opportunity, and opportunity really here is that these companies can reduce their risk of supply chain. And as you're probably aware, there are lots of these security incidents, lots of data breaches because of suppliers, of actually IT suppliers that actually didn't have their level of security on a good enough level, and then because these suppliers actually had some kind of an entry into the systems of these companies, let's say companies that bought their products or services, then these companies actually got hacked. So in any case, I think this is an obligation, but also an opportunity, and to actually decrease these risks, decrease these not only embarrassing situations, but also huge costs for these companies, critical infrastructure companies. All right, so let's see the agenda. First, I'll show you one table where I'll explain who actually needs to comply with what, because it's very often confusing. Our suppliers, do suppliers need to comply with NIS2? And I'll show you these kind of things. Also, what exactly does NIS2 require when it comes to suppliers? What are the exact requirements? Then I'll show you what is this process. So 5 steps basically that you need to kind of take to handle suppliers according to NIS2. And by the way, I also mentioned this CIR Commission Implementing Regulation 2690, which is also relevant here. And also how to monitor and how to, let's say, gather all the relevant information about the suppliers. And this is also, I would say, very often the pain. And then on the side of suppliers, basically what are the general, I'll show you the general 3 steps that you need to take as a supplier to basically comply with all of these requirements and basically give you a kind of a direction of what you need to do. And finally, I hope I'll have time to actually go a little bit through the mapping of ISO 27001 with NIS2, because this is also very often a question that people ask about, and about these 2 frameworks. All right, yeah, let's move on with the slide about who actually needs to comply with what. As you probably know, NIS2 prescribes that there are 18 sectors that have to be compliant with NIS2. And out of these 18, there are actually 3 sectors that are, let's say, digital companies or IT companies, and 15 sectors that are not these digital or IT companies. And for these companies that are not digital, for these 15 sectors, these companies have to comply with NIS2 directive, but also primarily with these local NIS2 laws. When I say local NIS2 laws, I mean this transposition process that is happening where each country in Europe, so each of 27 EU members states, they have to publish their own laws and regulations based on NIS2. And this process is now in a process. This is now taking place. So basically, out of these 27, maybe half of them have published laws and regulations based on NIS2. And typically, we call these NIS2 laws, right? Just not to complicate, because every country, of course, has their own name for these laws. But let's call them generally NIS2 laws. So, if you're a critical infrastructure company, let's say, I don't know, a transportation company, this is one of the sectors, then you have to comply with basically NIS2 directive, but primarily with these NIS2 laws in your particular country. And basically don't have to comply with anything else. Now, if you are this critical digital infrastructure company, so if you belong to these 3 sectors, and I'll explain these 3 sectors in the next slide, then you actually have to comply not only with these local NIS2 laws, you also have to comply with this CIR, which stands for Commission Implementing Regulation 2024/2690. So this CIR Commission Implementing Regulation describes in more detail what these digital infrastructure companies, what actually they have to do to raise their level of security. So, what I'm trying to say here is that on top of these country-specific NIS2 laws, digital infrastructure companies also have to comply with this CIR. So basically, you have 2 things in parallel that you have to take into account. Now, we'll share with you now two links. First one is a link to an article which is called Which Companies Must Comply with NIS2. There you will see a list of all these 18 sectors, and you can actually see also these 3 digital infrastructure companies. The second link will be to this YouTube video. It's called Understanding NIS2 Commission Implementing Regulation CIR 2024-2690. So this second one is a YouTube video where actually I explain in more detail this CIR. Now, if you join the webinar through Zoom or through YouTube, you can actually click these links that you see in the chat window, and they will open in your browser. If you join through LinkedIn, then because of some limitations in LinkedIn, you won't be able to click these links. But the workaround here is that you simply copy the URL, paste it into your browser, and it will open without any problems. Okay, good. Now let's move on with the next row here. Now, if you are a supplier to a critical infrastructure company, any of these 18 sectors, then your company does not need to comply with NIS2 or CIR or anything like this. Then you actually have to comply with security clauses in the agreements with those buyers. Okay. Now, I'm emphasizing this here because, again, suppliers of companies that are in NIS2 scope, they do not need to comply with NIS2. Very important here. It's I think very, very important to understand. Also, these suppliers have to comply with a standard, security standard. NIS2 doesn't say which standard, but in most cases this will be most probably ISO 27001 because this is a main cybersecurity standard, I mean international cybersecurity standard, and it's most commonly in use. So this is something that I see happen in most cases. Now, when we speak about other companies, but when I say other companies, these are the companies that are not within these 18 sectors. These are the companies that do not supply any products or services towards them. Of course, they have to comply with security clauses in agreements with their buyers, whoever these buyers are, but they do not have to comply with any standard. You know, if they want, they can go for ISO 27001 or I don't know, SOC 2 or NIST cybersecurity framework, but they don't have to, right? There is no obligation, at least not from a NIS2 perspective. Okay, good. Now let's move on to the next slides, and basically this is this let's say classification. I'm not sure if the word classification is a good word here, but let me show you first these 3 sectors from NIS2 that actually are considered that are relevant for IT companies and that have to be compliant with NIS2. So first of all, these are digital infrastructure companies, and digital infrastructure companies, if you read this text of NIS2, you will see that these are cloud computing service providers, data center service providers, providers of public communication networks. So basically this would be telecom companies, DNS service providers, and a couple of others. So basically all of these companies, they actually have to be compliant with NIS2. So they actually belong to this digital infrastructure sector. Now, this other sector, second sector, is digital providers. These digital providers are providers of online marketplaces, search engines, and social networking sites. So these kind of companies are this second category, sector here, and that they also have to be compliant with NIS2. And the third sector is ICT service management, and these are managed service providers and managed security service providers. Okay, so these 3 sectors must be compliant with NIS2, but if they're larger than 50 employees. So if they're larger than 50 employees, then they have to be compliant with NIS2 and also this CIR. If they're smaller than 50 employees, then basically not. So it really depends on the size of the company. Okay, now when it comes to suppliers, very often I get the question about what is the definition of a supplier. Well, basically NIS2 says very shortly, suppliers are direct suppliers or service providers. There you go. So it's unfortunately doesn't provide any more explanation there. But I think this is pretty clear, right? If you provide any services or products, then basically you are a supplier. And just to mention here, this doesn't concern only IT companies. This concerns any company. Okay. So, okay, if you are providing, I don't know, software development services, obviously you're a supplier. And if you're providing this to a company that is in the NIS2 scope, obviously you are considered a supplier. But if you're also a lawyer or, I don't know, bookkeeper, any of these kind of services, actually then you become a supplier to a company that is in NIS2 scope. And then this company in the NIS2 scope has to do all of these things that I'll explain in the next couple of slides. Good. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So let's see what exactly does NIS2, and later on what does this CIR actually, what do they require when it comes to suppliers. So I'll share the screen now with the text of NIS2. So I think you can see it now. Yeah. And by the way, we'll share actually now with you through the link this link to this text, full text of NIS2. And when you click the link, you will see the same thing that I'm showing you now. And basically, when you scroll down to Article 21, okay, here you will see this section 21. So this is about cybersecurity risk management measures, paragraph 2, and here you will see this point D. So supply chain security, including security related aspects concerning the relationship between each entity and its direct suppliers or service provider. It doesn't say much here, right? Then there is also this 21 third paragraph. So entities take into account vulnerabilities specific to each supplier and service provider and overall quality of products and cybersecurity practices of their suppliers and service providers, including their security development procedures. So again, rather generic. So NIS2 as a directive doesn't say much. However, if we switch to this Commission implementing regulation, there you will see much more precise requirements. We'll send you also now the link to this Commission implementing regulation. As you see, this CIR applies only to those digital infrastructure companies, only to those three sectors that I explained in the previous slide. Now, what is important here is that you will see this main part of CIR, which is, I would say, not very interesting. It only explains the significant incidents. But what is more important here is that you have this annex. And this annex actually is the main thing here in CIR. It actually provides a very detailed requirements, security requirements for digital infrastructure companies. Now, there are many of things here. I'm not going to spend much time on this. We already shared the link to this YouTube video where you can hear more details, but I'm going to scroll now to section 5. And there you will see detailed requirements when it comes to supply chain. Okay, here we go. So supply chain security. So basically here it requires companies to write this supply chain security. This is basically the purpose. Here it requires actually for entities to define the criteria for selecting their suppliers. As you can see, there are 4 criteria here. They have to take into account the risk assessment, which is coordinated risk assessment, which is basically kind of intergovernmental thing. Then when signing agreements with these suppliers, then these companies actually have to take into account all of these things here. So from H to, from A to H. So all of these things have to be actually included in the agreements. So these are the security clauses that companies in NIS2 scope have to include in the agreements with their suppliers. Okay, this is about the procurement process. This is about reviewing, monitoring, and other things about suppliers. This is also about monitoring, reviewing incidents, these kind of things. So as you can see, pretty much, in detail on what actually these companies have to do with when it comes to their suppliers. And there is this 5.2 about this directory. So you need to have some kind of a register or directory of all of your suppliers with all of this information. So these are the requirements from this CIR. Okay, going back to my presentation. So I think I covered, yeah, all of these things. Now, what I didn't actually show here are the requirements of these NIS2 laws that each country, each EU country has to publish. Why? Because, you know, it would take quite a lot for me to show you, you know, the, I don't know, 27 or so different, you know, slides with different legislation. But, you know, the thing is, when you actually analyze these NIS2 laws in each country, they're, I would say, kind of similar to CIR. Of course, there are differences. It's not like copy-paste there, but in most cases, these requirements of these local NIS2 laws are very similar to what was written in CIR. So in other words, if you actually go after this CIR, then in most cases, you will already be compliant also with these local NIS2 laws. What does this mean in effect? So, as I mentioned before, this CIR is actually mandatory only for these 3 sectors for digital infrastructure companies. But indirectly, the rest of the 15 sectors, if they follow this CIR, even though if they don't have to, the benefit if they do is that they will, in a large majority of, in a bigger percentage, they will also be compliant with the local NIS2 laws. So I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but unfortunately, this is how these EU regulations are. Okay, yeah, we'll also share now a link to my YouTube video, which explains a little bit in more detail how does this NIS2 transposition process work. So if you want to learn about this transposition for EU countries, then you can take a look at this video. Okay, I see a question from Frederick. Do the supply chain security requirements CIR match those in DORA? No, actually in DORA, the requirements are more detailed. So as today I'm not speaking about DORA, actually I'm focusing on NIS2. I didn't actually mention DORA. Actually, I will mention DORA in 1 or 2 slides when I speak about these methods for monitoring. So stick for maybe 5 minutes and then I'll come to a point with DORA. But anyway, DORA requirements are even stricter, even more detailed than NIS2. But again, this webinar today is not really about DORA. Good. Yeah, let's move on. So what is the process? So if your company must comply with NIS2 and NIS2 laws or CIR, then basically you should follow this 5-step process of handling suppliers. So first of all, you have to perform this risk assessment and find out what are all the risks that are related to basically having a supplier or I don't know, a partner or anyone in your supply chain. So it's not really a direct risk assessment of a particular supplier. It's a risk assessment of generally what are the risks of not having something in-house, of actually using something from the outside of your company. And then the next step is really that you perform this screening of your suppliers. So based on these risks, then you actually have to assess where, I don't know, let's say that you have 5 candidates, 5 suppliers for a particular job. Then you can actually screen these suppliers, taking into account not only the requirements for a particular job, but also the risks that are related to this kind of outsourcing. And then once you select a supplier, then based on these risks, and of course based on the results of this screening process, you actually have to define very strict security clauses in the agreements. As you've seen in the CIR, there are 6 or 7 actually items that you have to make sure that you take into account. And then after that, once you start doing a particular job with this supplier, let's say that they're a software development company, that they're developing software, then you have to specify very clear security requirements for that software. Okay, so then you actually specify even more detailed security requirements for a particular job that they're doing. And then a kind of an ongoing, I would say, step is really monitoring those suppliers and making sure that they comply with all of these security clauses in agreements, but also that they comply with whatever you have specified in these security requirements for that particular job. So all of these things are part of this monitoring. So I'll explain how you can do this monitoring in this next slide, but just to mention actually that these steps here are basically taken out of this CIR 2690, but also from ISO 27001. And if you want to see a little bit more details, then you can take a look at CIR section 6.1. So if you want to open this link that I've sent you for 2690, look for this annex 6.1, and there you will see even more requirements for, let's say, this process of handling suppliers. All right, we'll also send you now a link to an article which explains this process of handling suppliers according to ISO 27001. So if you're interested in more about this story about 27001, then you can see this article about 6-step process. Okay, now let's take a look at what actually these companies that are in the NIS2 scope, how can they actually obtain all the information, all the relevant information from their suppliers. I know this is a very tough question. I'm not going to give you a perfect answer now, but yes, this is what I get these questions very often, and I try to summarize in these, let's say, 8 or 9 bullets, let's say the most common ways of actually obtaining all the relevant information. And yeah, by the way, this is where actually 𝗿𝗲 comes as very useful, because again, as I mentioned, 𝗿𝗲 is much more detailed. And by the way, there is this 𝗿𝗲 regulation, which is a kind of a top level document, but then there are also these regulatory technical standards. Basically, these are even more detailed regulations that explain how 𝗿𝗲 needs to be implemented. And there is this regulatory technical standard called 2024-1773, and basically this one is about handling suppliers. Okay, and we'll share actually now the link with you for this CDR 2024-1773. This one is not relevant for NIS2, so you don't have to comply with it. However, there are lots of useful things there, including how to monitor IT suppliers. So if you want to kind of use an official document to learn, this is something that can be useful. And again, I'll go through these things. Actually, this 1773 CDR helped me write this slide that you're seeing now. Anyway, so how can you monitor IT suppliers? Okay. And basically, I'll list these things from the, let's say, the easiest ones on the top, and then the most difficult ones on the bottom. So, of course, it's up to each company to decide which of these bullets, how many of these, 9 bullets. So, which of these 9 bullets are applicable to you. You don't have to use all 9. But again, you have to judge from the risk assessment, from the level of risk, which of these 9 you will use. Okay, the easiest one is really to have regular meetings with your suppliers and basically get in touch with them and obtain this information more or less officially by simply speaking to them very often. Because if you have a supplier and you basically never talk to them, of course you're not going to be informed. It's much easier to obtain information through some informal, I would say, relationship than not talking to them all. So again, regular meetings, I don't know, once a week, once every month or so, will certainly help develop this, not only your relationship, but also your information about security. And then, of course, you would need to have some kind of regular supplier reports. These reports can be, of course, about their delivering their job, whatever it is, but you can also require from them to actually inform you about all the security relevant aspects. So basically, how they comply with XYZ, how they comply with these security clauses in agreements, these kind of things. And of course, you have to define what is how often they need to send these reports. Is this once a month, once a quarter, these kind of things. Also, what you could actually control are the training records of their employees. So if you oblige those suppliers to go through some security training or awareness, then you can actually get an access to those records, and basically by this you are also monitoring if they're raising the competence of their employees for whatever job they're doing for you. Another, let's say, level of monitoring would be that you actually approve any new employees or subcontractors for those suppliers. I know, this becomes even more and more uncomfortable. I know that it's sometimes it's very hard to ask this from your suppliers, but again, in some cases it might actually be possible. Let's say again that you are a large company, that you have some small software development company. Of course, this software development company will enable you to do these kind of approvals if you are an important client for them. On the other hand, if your supplier is Microsoft, well, I have a doubt, I mean, that they will agree with this kind of a clause. But my point being is that, again, out of these 9 bullets, you have to select what is applicable in your case and what is relevant, let's say, for your risks. Anyway, you can ask actually your supplier that they actually ask you for permission for I don't know, new employees, subcontractors, these kind of things, because this is actually how you monitor the level of risk. Again, this is something that gives you a very good insight on what is happening. Of course, you can ask this supplier to report to you any vulnerabilities and incidents, right? This is very, very important very often, that you get this information instantaneously so that you can actually react in real time, or at least in adequate time. You can actually also ask to have a direct insight into their IT system. So whatever monitoring, I don't know, software they're using, that you actually also have the access to this monitoring software, so that you actually know what exactly is happening with their operational systems, especially if they're running these operational systems for you. So if this is I don't know, managed service provider, if they're running your production servers, then you would like to know in real time actually what is happening with your systems, but also with their systems. You could also do exercising and testing, not only within your company, but also your company together with your suppliers, okay? Especially if these suppliers are handling your production systems, then you actually want to know how they would react to certain disaster scenarios. And I mean, this is part obviously of business continuity resilience. But again, this is a way for you to monitor actually how they are doing, how is their security doing, how is their resilience doing. Of course, you can ask for an independent audit. Independent audit like ISO 27001 certification audit. This is also something that is doable, and I mean, very often actually companies do. I mean, suppliers do agree to something like this, because they actually want to become or maintain you as a buyer. And finally, you could do actually this supplier audit that you as a buyer do. So this is not an independent third-party audit. This is something that you actually, when you send your direct auditor and audit these suppliers. Okay, again, I know these are, I would say, tough things, and I see some questions coming in. So let me answer them. So William is asking, how would this work with Microsoft or Amazon? Okay, it wouldn't. So, but let me just read it all the way through. And what happens in these situations where they would not be able to provide employee records to us to approve? Can we still qualify for NIS2? Okay, let me go through this story again. These 9 bullets are not mandatory. Okay, I didn't say this. This is something where you actually have to judge from these 9 what would be appropriate in your case. Okay, this is very important to understand. Second, of course, yeah, Microsoft or Amazon might agree on some regular meetings, but if you're a bigger customer, but probably wouldn't actually agree to any of these other things. By the way, they're already ISO 27000 certified, so this is something that they already have. So, how actually should you do it? If you have, let's say, some very, very highly risky, I don't know, production system, and if your risk assessment tells you that this is highly risky, then you actually have to start looking at several potential suppliers. Okay, one of them could be, I don't know, Amazon AWS. But if you see that actually this kind of a supplier doesn't want to, let's say, introduce some additional security, some additional security measures, or if they don't want to be audited or don't allow this kind of an audit, extra audit towards your company, then you can actually take a look at some other suppliers. There are many other smaller cloud providers that are willing actually to get engaged in lots of these activities that I'm showing on the screen now. So again, everything depends on risks. Everything starts with the risks and your level of risk. And I mean, Amazon AWS is not the only company in the world. It's probably the best for, you know, virtual servers of let's say various kinds, but again, it's not the only one. You can go for a slightly more expensive solution, which would be more security and which would provide you with more security. Okay. Okay. Frederick is asking, for cloud service providers, can we use reports such as SOC 2 Type 2 as a source of the monitoring? Of course, yes. Yes, it's so again, nothing is set in stone there. Everything depends on the level of risk. If your risk level is such that this kind of reports would be enough, then by all means use it. If your risks levels are higher, then you will probably need to get, I would say, more security from this supplier. So then these reports would not be enough. Again, this depends really on the level of risks. Okay, G is asking, this supplier monitoring assumes I have all the required knowledge to assess their systems, etc. Yes, so if you don't have this knowledge yourself, then you can hire someone who actually knows how to do these audits on or anything else that is related to this monitoring. Okay, I know that you're probably not very happy with my answers, but again, NIS2 nor CIR do not specify these kind of things. I'm just giving you a kind of options what you can do, and basically I'm telling you, this all depends on risks. Depending on your risk, you will have to decide what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and very often you will have to consult also with your senior management, and you have to tell them, look, the risk is here, and the suppliers are here. Here are the options. Okay, this one is the cheapest one, but doesn't want to speak about security too much. This one is much more expensive, but they are willing to do everything related to security. And then you ask your senior management, okay, please choose between these 2 or 3 options, taking security into account. This is how it works. All right. Yeah, I also have a question. Sirirat asks, does it have any relevance to ISO 27701? So it's about privacy. I wouldn't say that this here would, I mean, security and privacy are related, obviously, but I wouldn't say that, you know, this thing that I'm speaking about, IT suppliers, is directly related to ISO 27701. It's something that that is kind of a parallel topic. And by the way, yesterday there was a new version of ISO 27701 published. So from October 14, you actually have this 2025 revision of this 27701, the privacy standard. Okay, good. Now let's say if you're an IT supplier, so basically what do you have to do? If you do not have to comply directly with NIS2, then in which direction should you go? First of all, you will have to comply with some security standard. You can choose, I don't know, to go for, let's say, 27001 or something else. In my view, 27001 is probably the best because it's the most widespread. The knowledge is the easiest to obtain. Let's say the tools for implementation are the most widespread, and so on. So it's probably the best option to do. Second thing is you actually have to take, you have to read this local NIS2 law and see if there is anything particular to suppliers, because there might be that one country in Europe says, okay, for IT suppliers in our country, there is a specific requirement that doesn't exist in any other country. So you just have to, you know, take this into account just to be informed. And of course, you have to go through CIR and see not directly what you have to do, but what your buyer will ask you. So you have to actually prepare upfront to know what to expect from your buyers that are in the NIS2 scope. And finally, this third step here is to see what are direct buyer requirements. So again, the buyer, again, the company within the NIS2 scope will provide security clauses in the agreement, and you have to be very, very, you need to have a deep understanding on what these requirements are. And I'm emphasizing this here because, you know, very often when we help companies become ISO 27001 compliant, one of the first things to do as part of ISO 27001 is to list all the requirements from buyers. And very often, you know, these companies simply don't know what these requirements are. So unfortunately, they don't know. So I'm emphasizing here, this is very, very important that you know all these requirements and list them, and then make sure that you're compliant. Okay, now, if you're interested in what are the steps to become compliant with ISO 27001, I'm not going to cover this in today's webinar. This is a completely separate webinar, which would take at least 1 hour. But there is an article on our website which explains all of these steps, and also the timing, the costs, everything that you want to know. And this is this ISO 27001 implementation guide. So if you want to comply with 27001, open this link, and it will show you, it will answer all of these questions. Okay, now let's move in just a little bit in this mapping between ISO 27001 and NIS2. So as I mentioned before, this NIS2 is rather generic, and yes, there is a very good overlap between 27001, and if your company is within NIS2 scope, then you can also use 27001 to help you comply with NIS2. So for example, for this Article 20 governance, you can use Clause 5 leadership, Clause 9 performance evaluation, clauses 7.2, 7.3. When it comes to these cybersecurity risk management measures, there is this article, this is Article 21 in NIS2. You can use, you know, all of these clauses, but most importantly, Annex A security controls. Article 23 reporting obligations, you can use some of the controls from Annex A, but not quite, because this Article 23 is a little bit more detailed than ISO 27001. But, you know, other than this incident reporting, everything, you can cover everything else basically through ISO 27001. But since NIS2 is only a top-level document, what is more important are these NIS2 laws and this CIR. I can actually show you very quickly, since again we don't have enough time in this webinar, but I can show you on the example of CIR actually how you can map all of these requirements to 27001. So let me switch the screen and go back to this beginning of this annex in the CIR. So just to remind you, this is this CIR which applies to digital infrastructure company. Annex shows detailed requirements. So for example, here you have this policy on top level policy, okay? And you can actually map this to ISO 27001 clause 5.2, which is also about a top level policy, but also to this control A.5.1, which also speaks about writing policies and procedures. And then you have this section 1.2, roles, responsibilities, and authorities. And you can very easily map this towards clause 5.3 in ISO 27001, or also this control A.5.2, which speaks about roles and responsibilities. Moving forward, 2.1 risk management framework. This actually maps to 6.1, clause 6.1 in ISO 27001. This is about how you actually assess and treat risks. And then compliance monitoring. This is basically about management review. So this is clause 9.3 in ISO 27001. Independent review of information security. This is internal audit 9.2. So, I mean, it's rather easy to match any of these sections in a CIR with a particular clause in ISO 27001. However, the thing is that this CIR is more detailed than ISO 27001. So what does this mean? This means that if you go, if you are a company within NIS2 scope, so I'm not speaking now anymore about suppliers, I'm speaking about companies within the NIS2 scope. If you are in NIS2 scope, it's not going to be enough for you to go for 27001. You can use 27001 as a basis, but then you will actually have to build on top of this basis all these other requirements that are specified in CIR, or of course in local NIS2 laws. Okay, good. We'll also send you now an article. It's called a Big Guide to ISO 27001 clauses, and basically this is the article which explains all the clauses within 27001 and also all the controls in 27001. So if you want to study this 27001 standard in more detail, you can take a look at this big guide. We will also send you another article, link to another article. It's called How to Implement NIS2 Cybersecurity Measures, Mapping with 27001. So you can actually take a look at this mapping there. Okay, good. Yeah, now let me show you a couple of tools from Advisera that you can actually use to comply with both NIS2 and also with 27001. So let me switch back to my screen. So here we have this product called NIS2 Documentation Toolkit. It basically helps you with writing all of the documents that are needed for NIS2. And you can see here a version in English, but also we have this toolkit in basically all the other languages, where these countries have published their laws and regulations. So for example, this one in French. This one was made for a Belgian market, so this one was adapted for a local NIS2 law in Belgium. Anyway, going back to English, you can see actually these folders. In each of these folders you have several, oh sorry, I'm showing the 27001, I wanted to show NIS2. Basically you have all the documents that are needed. For example, here you can see that this risk assessment methodology is compliant with NIS2 directive, but also with this point in CIR. And with this ENISA technical implementation guidance. Here you have several cybersecurity policies and procedures, but I'm not going to go into these. I wanted to show you this supply chain security. So here is this supplier security policy. So when you basically open this, you will actually go through a wizard which takes you through a couple of questions, and it helps you personalize this document for your company. And then once you download this document, you will actually see this document. And let me show you now, where is this? Okay. This is what usually happens in this kind of presentation. Let me open again the document that I downloaded. Okay, here it goes. So this already creates a supplier security policy for you. It inserts your company logo, your company name, basically any information that you entered through the wizard, and it gives you the whole text of this supplier security policy and anything that is important to have, let's say, for your document when dealing with suppliers. As you can see, how we identify the risks, what are the criteria for selecting the suppliers and partners, and so on and so forth. Okay, second product is this Conformio software. This is ISO 27001 implementation software, and this is basically meant for suppliers. So if you as a supplier have to comply with 27001, then you can use this kind of a software to actually take you through all the steps. And this Conformio is more than documents. It does have all the documents, all the templates, but it also has automation when it comes to risk register, statement of applicability, audit compliance. So it automatically shows you what clauses you have to, how you're mapping towards each clause of the standard. It also has these document wizards for filling out documents and so on. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but what we'll send you now are these links so that you can actually sign up for a free trial of NIS2 documentation toolkits. but also, so this is of course for companies that are in the NIS2 scope, but also for this 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 software. So you have these links now in the chat window. If you want, you can sign up for a free trial and test it out how it works. You can actually go through everything there and see how this can, if this can help you. Okay, good. I have a question from William. To follow up on Frederick's questions, if you're already compliant with ISO 27001 and SOC 2, would that satisfy the requirement for supplier monitoring under NIS2? Would that be enough? Again, NIS2 or CIR, they do not specify what kind of monitoring companies that are in the NIS2 scope have to comply. It basically offers them some kind of options which they can take. So let me give you an example. If you're, let's say, a supplier, let's say if you're a lawyer and you're supplying your services towards a company that is within the NIS2 scope, of course that the company within NIS2 scope is not going to connect to a lawyer's systems because he doesn't have any. They're not going to, you know, ask for, I don't know, the audit. They're not going to perform an audit of this lawyer because probably this lawyer doesn't have, there is no need to perform something like this. So in this case, they might only accept the ISO 27000 certification as enough proof that this lawyer is compliant. However, if this company is a supplier and they're hosting core operational systems of this company needs to scope, obviously ISO 27000 certification is not going to be enough. It will be important, it will be mandatory, but it will not be enough. Some other, let's say, other ways of monitoring will be needed as well. Okay, good. Okay, well, great. So let me then move on through some. I'm going to skip this slide about biggest challenges because we're not going to be able to finish the webinar in time. So let me go to a conclusion and then I'll go through some questions that came in the meantime. So, you know, managing this supplier security, well, it's never going to be easy, but it doesn't actually have to be a overly huge effort, right? So I would say that it can be a moderate effort, but you actually have to, you know, set this process right. And if you have this process right, then you will be able to spend some reasonable amount of time, but not too much time when handling supplier security. Of course, for that purpose, you can use Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit if you're a NIS2 scope, or if you're on the supplier side, you can use 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 ISO 27000 software. And we'll actually send you now also the meeting link with our product expert. So if you want to get a demo of these products, if you don't want to test them out on your own, if you don't want to open this free trial, you can actually get a demo from our product expert, and you can actually use this link that you will see now in the chat window to schedule a call. Okay, good. Now let's go with the questions and answers. So please do send me any questions that you have through a question pane. Yeah, well, I'm waiting for your questions. Just a couple of notes here. So first of all, feel free to reach out to me directly and ask any question. And here's my email. You can see it on the screen now, and you can use this email address to send me your questions. Second, you can follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube, and on LinkedIn I'm publishing, I would say, latest news for cybersecurity, compliance, regulations, these kind of things. So if you want to keep in touch, it's good to watch, to follow me on LinkedIn. On YouTube, I publish lots of videos around 27001 and NIS2. So if you want to learn through this, I would say, video format, then you could actually take a look at my YouTube profile. I also have this Secure and Simple podcast where that is intended primarily for CISOs and for consultants. So if you're a consultant or a CISO, you can take a look, and because there I interview other consultants, and you can learn actually a lot from them on what actually are the best practices for managing security. Okay, another thing is my next webinar will be about what is the CISO's role in ISMS maintenance according to 27001. So I'll explain what exactly companies must do to maintain their certification, and also what is the security manager's role within this. So this will be next Wednesday. You can see now the upcoming webinars on screen, and you can actually register if you're interested in this. Okay, let me see a couple of questions that came in before the webinar. So Peter was asking what happens if IT suppliers ignore the requirements of NIS2. So again, NIS2 does not apply directly to suppliers. What you really have to be careful is to comply with the security requirements in the agreements with your buyers. Okay, so if your buyer is within the NIS2 scope, they will specify these security requirements in their agreements, and this is what you have to pay attention to. So NIS2 is not directly relevant to suppliers. Tinus is asking how much weight does a NIS2 certification carry in comparison to 27001? So first of all, there is no certification for companies for NIS2. Okay, for 27001 obviously there is, but there is no such requirement for companies for NIS2. Now, if you're an individual, there are courses around 27001, and there are courses for NIS2, and I mean 27001 is much more widespread standard. NIS2 is not so widespread, but if you want to be recognized as an expert in NIS2, then by all means you should get for a course and get the certificate, individual certificate, after you complete the exam. Frankie was asking what approach does one has to take for existing contracts. Okay, so if you are if your company is in NIS2 scope, if you already have contracts with suppliers, which obviously you have, then you will actually have to revisit all of these contracts and make sure that you have gone through this whole process, as I mentioned in the presentation. So, you know, start with the risk assessment, go through this, let's say, criteria for selecting suppliers, define appropriate clauses, and then change your existing agreements and so on. In some cases, it might happen that actually after going through this process, you realize that this supplier is simply not secure enough and that you will have to change the supplier. So it's possible. Okay, Barbara was asking, we need to comply with NIS2, but our internal audits follow ISO 27001. It is unclear to me what the differences are and to what extent, if any, we should consider NIS2 in our integrated management system internal audits, and what to specifically include in our annual management review. Okay, so basically to understand the difference, you have to read the CIR. If your company is digital infrastructure company, to read the CIR and really see what CIR requires. Also to see what local NIS2 law requires. So when you actually compare these two with 27001, then you will know what the differences are. Now, you may or may not merge the NIS2 internal audit with 27001 internal audit. My suggestion would be that you do merge them, because these are very similar things, but there might be some cases where you simply don't have, I don't know, enough time or enough knowledge to do them at the same time. So in this case, you might actually do them separately. So, but in any case, I would suggest that you do this actually at the same time. Same thing with management review. According to CIR, this management review is also mandatory, and you can actually merge the management review according to CIR and according to 27001. Okay, Narinder was asking breakdown of costs to achieve 27001. So there are several costs included. There is a cost of buying I don't know, tools like Conformia or these kind of things. There are costs of buying knowledge, like sending your employees for ISO 27001 courses. By the way, we'll send you also these a link to actually ISO 27001 courses on our Advisera website. You will see actually courses are free, and we charge only if you go for the exam. But if you don't need an exam, you can go through all the videos for free. So then there is also an certification cost. So if your company wants to get certified, then you need to actually find a certification body and pay for it. We'll also send you now a link to this calculator for this certification cost. And you also have to calculate the amount of time that your employees will spend on this project, because this is also a cost. And by the way, you have the breakdown of all these costs in this article called Implementation Guide, because this is something that is covered there. Okay, good. I received one question from Julia. If a company is one of the 18 sectors but has less than 50 employees, does it have to comply with NIS2? No, the answer is no. So if you actually are less than 50 employees, there is also a criteria that you have to be less than 10 million euros in revenue. So in this case, then you don't have to comply with NIS2. Okay, I think I answered all of your questions. So let me wrap up the webinar. You know, as mentioned, this 1 hour webinar is really too short to go into all the details, like, you know, risk assessment of suppliers or how to audit them. But for that purpose, we will organize some other trainings. And of course, you can check out, you know, a NIS2 toolkit and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to help you with your efforts. And yeah, to download the presentation deck, you'll actually you will find the link for downloading the presentation deck from this webinar. If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, then simply stay on the same page where you are now, and in about 10 minutes you will see a download link in the comments section. So just leave the web page open, and in the comment section you will see this download link. And if you join through Zoom, then you will receive this download link in a couple of hours, latest by tomorrow morning. And finally, you also see a link to a short survey. It's very short, only 3 questions, and I would appreciate if you give me the feedback, because this will help me understand what can I improve in this webinar. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.